Welcome. This is the Late Late Show with ET, where views with security and law are being provided to the public. We are reading from Money, May 2016, Fortune, April 1st, 2016, Parents, November 2015, Ebony, July 2016, Shape, May 2016, and the book will be Oklahoma by Guy Baldwin. These beautiful bowls of soup invite relaxed meals. Katrina Scott. Top with 1 tablespoon of goji berries, 1/2 teaspoons of cocoa nibs, a small handful of blueberries and/or raspberries, and 1 tablespoon of toasted coconut flakes if desired, and you have a cocoa berry smoothie bowl. Virginia Soul Smith. As you head outside for a long run or crank up the resistance in spinning class, you're focusing on muscles you're going to build and calories that are being burned. It means, as doctors have discovered, that you have enormous control in maintaining your wellness from top to bottom. We tend to think of estrogen and progesterone only in terms of ovulation and menstruation, but they're actually critical for the health of every cell and organ in our bodies, says MD, a professor of endocrinology and metabolism at the University of British Columbia and the founder of the Center for Menstrual Cycle and Ovulation Research in Vancouver. For instance, studies show that estrogen helps shield brain cells from damage caused by oxidative stress and beta-amyloid protein, which is thought to be a culprit in Alzheimer's disease. Repeated sweat sessions that are too long or too intense can backfire, throwing estrogen and progesterone out of whack, studies have found. Specifically, it affects the hypothalamus, a gland in the brain that directly influences your levels of estrogen and progesterone, says MD, the chairman emeritus of the Department of Obstetrics, Gynecology, and Women's Health at St. Louis University. And because you'll be working out smarter, not harder, you'll have more energy, motivation, and free time to boot. That's enough time to build muscle, burn calories, improve your fitness, and get the results you want without going into overdrive. Do 1 or 2 days of high intensity interval training, or HIIT, a week for the biggest overall health and fitness benefits, says John Porcari, PhD, a professor of exercise and sports science at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. Mix in a few minutes of slower, steady pace jogging and alternate between the two. If you overlay during the week or two before your period, your ovaries produce more progesterone, which raises your core temperature so you naturally burn more calories, Dr. Pryor explains. Being too heavy or too thin can cause your hormones to fall out of sync. During the follicular phase, for instance, increased estrogen levels may cause breast tenderness. So how do estrogen and progesterone work again? The next big thing in sweat tech isn't a wrist gadget. Wear them head to toe, then boldly accessorize with shades and a sweet bed. Happy couples bliss trick. In fact, researchers say crazed couples may be better off because they know how to maximize their limited time together. The best day to browse your dating app. TLC is the best RX. Angela Barnham. Muhammad aims to become the first American to compete in the Olympics while wearing a hijab, as well as being the first African American woman to compete in the Olympics in fencing. Robin and Andrea McBride share their unlikely journey to becoming the wine industry's hottest sister act by Kimberly Seals Allers. Like most sisters, they quickly began to laugh and tell stories of their time apart. Unlike most, this was their first meeting. Both had also spent years estranged from their dad, and this meeting was the culmination of a 5-year search for their father's family as a result of a request he made before succumbing to stomach cancer. But what emerged after that connection was beyond anything either imagined. The two began creating a legacy. Their business model was simple: get small brands from New Zealand and sell them to distributors in California. They hold all the control and relationships with restaurants and retailers, and it is usually hard to get their attention unless you are bringing them a lot of money. Then we go back to the distributor and say, "We already had it ordered," says Robin. Even with their tenacity, they still face many obstacles, especially as they sought funds to expand their business. "We kept hitting brick walls," reveals Andrea. Ultimately, an investor in New Zealand provided additional capital for their business, and the sisters connected with a high-ranking executive in the wine business who helped them navigate their way. The price point for the products emphasizes their mission to make wine more accessible, with each bottle retailing for less than $20. The brand philosophy also means they want to provide education to draw in new enthusiasts through seminars and wine camp one-on-one events. The comprehensive numbers on African Americans haven't even been tabulated. Despite all the industry challenges the women have faced, they believe one not-so-secret weapon gives them the competitive edge. "We have a relationship that transcends our business," says Robin. Random Thoughts by Damon Young are very smart brothers. Stop going to brunch and films because you don't want to be the creepy guy who goes to brunch and films by himself. And watch it die because your wife was the one who reminded you to buy cat food. The Blackest Thing, Sexiest Song. When attempting to make the completely arbitrary determination of the sexiest song of all time, three specific questions need to be answered. Erica and Goodman. After receiving news of her sister's mysterious death, Grace Greenleaf, played by Merle Dandridge, picks up her life in Phoenix and heads back to the Bluff City to get answers to questions that have plagued her past. And it is Grace who seems to be carrying the weight of her family's misdoings while they keep up appearances. Erica Ann Goodman also had the pleasure of doing an article on Vivica A. Fox. Fox, however, is refusing to be stripped of her femininity and sexuality. "It's a great time to be a beautiful Black woman. You can't deny our timeless beauty. Everyone wants to be Insta famous now. They don't realize this business requires dedication," says the Indiana native. "I just try to be a good person, and I live by the motto, good Black, don't cry." Angela Barnham. The archetype of the Black athlete, a wonderful part of our country's legacy, is not always what we imagine it to be. Angela Wells out of Denver, Colorado, because it worked for me. "I noticed my daughter was sliding all around on our hardwood floor, so I added some puffy paint to the bottom of her socks." Melissa Bernardo Frederick, Maryland. "During bath time, my son hates getting his hair washed because the water drips into his face. So I stuck stars on the ceiling above the bath, and now I just say, 'Look at the stars.'" The bottom line. Heather, go and wash. But when you're a first-time parent, it's better to sound silly than be sorry. Do I have to breastfeed for a whole year? But a mom should stop breastfeeding if she realizes that she's no longer enjoying it, even though it has a myriad benefits, says Erica Brody, MD, Director of Pediatric Breastfeeding Medicine at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai in New York City. On the other hand, there's no need to wean as soon as your child turns 1. If prolonged breastfeeding makes you both happy. Is it always bad to wake a sleeping baby? It's also a good strategy to wake a sleeping infant before you go to bed for a dream feed, in which she's awake enough to latch on or suck a bottle and then dozes as she eats. And by 6 months, you can wake your baby from a long nap to keep her on schedule so that she goes down more easily at that time. Get messy in the bath. Jessica Hartshorn. "Here parents forget the year's new toys sent to us months before the holidays. Lucky us. And invite kids of all ages to come in and give them a whirl. Lucky them." Such as, "We like that Lakeshore Learning fully furnished adventure treehouse. In addition to being sturdy and good looking, it attracted both boy and girl testers wanting to play family. And Disney Playmation Marvel Adventure Starter Pack. The wearer ducks and runs to battle the bad guy. Captain America's help is optional. In the Wowie Microzar, our testers beg to take him home. These accessories meant to entertain the kiddie table are so charming, you might even be tempted to pull up a chair. Jennifer Sotomayor, it's less expensive to buy a cheeseburger than a pound of broccoli. Amanda Wheeler, if you don't feed them enough, it's considered neglect, so it should be the same if you are feeding them too much. You might not recognize their names, but they're the biggest stars in kids' digital entertainment. Behind the videos. Dr. Jennifer Shu. Toddlers often do better than expected on their first flight, but there are a few things you can do to improve your odds. It's also best to buy her a ticket so you can bring a car seat to buckle her into. She'll be less likely to squirm if she's belted in the same way she is in a car. If her ear bothers her during takeoff and initial descent, having something to drink or munching on some food can help relieve the pressure. Michael Froman, U.S. Trade Representative. Froman may need a buzzer beater in the post-election lame duck session to salvage his world-bending project. Steve Kerr. Behind the scenes, he empowers those around him to make decisions, reinforces the value of work-life balance, and meets problems head-on. Angela Merkel. It was action that sealed her legacy as a great leader, but it may be the beginning of the end of her power. Lawrence Silver Laughlin. The big question for investors is whether today's unusually big spread represents a great opportunity or a trap. During the recent high-yield slide, bonds rated CCC or lower, the bottom of the credit rating barrel, lost 22% of their value, according to Morningstar. BB-rated junk bonds at the high end of the spectrum lost only 6%. Chris Taylor. Worries about China's slowdown have buffeted Yum Brands, parent of KFC and Pizza Hut, which plans to split off its China business to localize the contagion. And Shake Shack's shares have fallen back to earth, plummeting below $35 from over $90 as investors realized that the small burger chain's growth couldn't justify its Mars orbit valuations. Throw in an uncertain economic outlook and industry-wide pressures to increase the payoff fast food workers and restaurants have looked like an increasingly unappetizing stew to investors, making their stocks among the biggest losers in this year's market dip. Over the past 3 years, they had floated between 12 and 15 times EBITDA. The bulls believe that American consumers will remain healthy and hungry enough to keep restaurant revenues growing, especially since unemployment is below 5% and cheap gas is leaving more cash in their pockets. Total sales for 2015 edged upward by 3% to more than $700 billion. And market research firm MPT Group forecasts that Americans will make 61.8 billion visits to restaurants and food service outlets in 2016, which will be the highest figure since before the Great Recession. But there are some real winners in the industry. Among the dominant trends, says Riggs, anything hot and spicy, think sriracha, ghost peppers, and jalapenos, morning meals, such as McDonald's all-day breakfasts, and healthier menus that break the pizza and cold mode. If the idea of betting on one horse makes you antsy, there are funds that let investors play the industry more broadly. Miller says restaurant stocks could be a safe haven even if the U.S. economy proves to be in or close to another downturn. Christopher Tkachuk, the best apps for summer planning. Hopper, one of the best apps on the market that analyzes an archive of data. Hopper spots trends in airfare prices and predicts the best time to pounce on low fares. Once you plug in your preferred departure and destination info, Hopper pulls up a color-coded multi-month calendar that presents the best time to fly at the cheapest cost. It has been said that the best way to explore a city is to get lost in it. Share your route or download other users' tracks, such as a walking tour of Jaipur, India, or the best driving route to discover the German castles between Amstatt and Sigmaringen. Jennifer Alsever. You don't need to be crazy to be entrepreneurial, says Mansell, who holds the school's Williams A. and Betty H. Hassler Chair in New Enterprise Development. Most of those people go back to salary jobs after 2 years or less, and that's where it gets interesting. Big companies are willing to pay more because they believe they'll get more bang for their buck, says John Reed, Senior Executive Director at IT staffing firm Robert Half Technology. She discovered she hated the back office tasks of budget and taxes, but she excelled at getting press for her startup in a number of national beauty magazines. When she went back to the workforce, she applied for high-level public relations jobs, despite no formal training or past PR positions. Lauren Silver Laughlin. Respondents to our survey, who are business insiders and C-suite executives, aren't the only ones who have fallen in love, then out, then back in love. With more than 45 million subscribers, this U.S. business is mature and, more important, has become very profitable, allowing Netflix to invest $5 billion to create 31 new series this year. Before they can generate $1, they have to spend money to get content to have a service that people would sign up for. By the nature of the beast, you have to invest up front. That implies the remaining value of roughly $75 a share comes from the international business, which represents 30% of revenue and is projected to grow 65% by the end of 2016. He points to Netflix penetration in markets like Germany and France that are not necessarily known for being too U.S. culture-centric, but where it has reached about 10% of viewers, a key hurdle to showing it has a material presence in the market. The trouble, he says, is that many of the grand expectations are already reflected in the stock price. DVD by mail, the business that killed DVD by mail. So Netflix, the streaming service, is on a growth streak, but the stock has been volatile. So I think Netflix is helping actors just expand the possibility of jobs. By Erica Fry. Here's a stumper. We live as the Silicon Valley narrative goes in an area of reckless disruption, speeding toward frictionless existence, courtesy of Amazon, Uber, the iPhone, and sundry other modern wonders. Yet we also live by the reckoning of many concerned economists at a time of historically low productivity growth. Alternatively, the OECD has nuanced research asserting that productivity is soaring at top multinational firms. It's just the rest of the business world slower to adopt innovation that's increasingly falling behind. However disappointing the U.S. productivity stats may be, they're not productive of what's to come. They're not predictive of what's to come. Charles Duhigg. And feeling like you're in control turns out to be critical for triggering self-motivation initiative, which in turn is critical for productivity. But if you do have it, you're proactively deciding what to focus on and what to be motivated for. Teach people to emotionally crave that control, and they will develop this bias toward action. Will they make the best choice every time? Studies show that the best way is to just hit reply, reply, reply. But when you do that, you prime your brain to pay attention to things that you think are important and to ignore distractions much more easily. A lot of executives told me that whenever they read a new book, they would call up their colleagues and describe all the important ideas from the book to them. People who make the best financial decisions sit down regularly and say, what was my bank balance a week ago or a month ago, and what's my balance today? Writing that down takes a little more time, a little bit more time. And now for Paul J. Wynn. To calm their nerves, investors have traditionally turned to widows and orphan stock, rock-solid shares of the biggest dividend-paying companies, firms destined to dominate their industries for years. Even stodgy giants like General Motors, Merrill Lynch, and Lehman Brothers were forced into bankruptcy to a sale out of business. Widows and orphan stocks are supposed to be safe enough for a widow or an orphan to own in any type of market. The traditional definition pointed you to names like General Electric, Procter and Gamble, or one of the big drug stocks, says John Fox, Chief Investment Officer at Fenimore Asset Management. Trouble is, when the S&P 500 index sank 37% in 2008 in the global financial panic, shares of GE and Merck plunged more. After the Clinton administration proposed health care reform in 1993, even the biggest healthcare shares were hit. Abra notes, when the broad market sank 5.5% in the first 2 months of this year, the S&P 500 High Quality Rankings Index held its ground. Call it the Titanic theory of investing. You've probably been told that the absolute biggest and most dominant companies is the best way to find safe and stable stocks. Alas, that's not necessarily been true in recent years. In the 2000 and 2002 tech wreck, for instance, the S&P 600 Small Stock Index fell only 22%, less than half what the broad market lost. For every dollar of sales they generate, they bring in 30-cent profit, which is phenomenal, says Fox. They generate $400 million a year in cash, and they need to invest about $20 million back in the business, so the rest is for dividends and shareholders. So-called low volatility stocks, defensive shares that literally bounce up and down less than the broad market, were trading at around a 50% discount to the broad market 15 years ago, Allen says. But they've become so popular in recent years, they're trading at a 20% premium. Bypass the bandwagon. Beware of low volatility ETFs because they're going to show you a fantastic track record to attract new business, Allen says. The average stock in the iShares MSCI USA minimum volatility ETF trades at a price earnings ratio of more than 20 versus less than 17 for the broad market and the S&P 500 High Quality Rankings Index. Cheaper still are quality stocks in sectors of the market that have been beaten up lately, such as industrials and energy. Yet the stock has outperformed the broad market by 4 percentage points annually over the past 15 years and 7 points a year over the past 5. That's because the stock's yield may be high, not because its payouts have grown recently, but because the stock price got crushed. If you can find that trade among stocks with a decent current yield, all the better. If you have a track record of raising dividends in each of the last 35 or so years, that's going to be the last thing you do. For a fund that offers you exposure to the broader U.S. market, including some small and medium-sized stocks, check out SPDR S&P Dividend ETF, which is on our Money 50 list. John Wagner. Says Rosenberg, lower oil prices might not be producing the boost to consumption you'd expect, but it's still there. As stocks near their traditional May doldrums, this could be the time to ease up. Carolyn Victor. Chances are you've also ignored the advice because it runs counter to buy and hold investing and dates back to a bygone era when London stock traders would take an extended holiday in May, leading to light trading volumes and low stock returns for several months. That's an incredible batting average, says Sam Stovall, U.S. equity strategist at S&P Capital IQ. That's because cash and bonds don't typically meet meager stock returns in the summer, especially after considering lost dividends, trading costs, and taxes. While equity is in general language in the summer months, defensive sectors that don't require strong economic growth to do better than most. Understand, this is still a major move that can trigger a big tax bill, so the strategy is best suited for your IRAs and 401ks. To get there, jettison frothy and volatile equities such as speculative small stocks, which enjoy their biggest gains from November to April anyway. But that requires selling equities just as they're entering the fruitful November to April stretch. Tim Marrier. While that's good advice, it's not always the best advice. My friend Tim Donahue, for one, didn't want to be forced to live a particular life. If Tim felt trapped in a dead-end job, he could A, quit, B, go back to school, C, move to another city, or D, do all of the above. Liquidity and flexibility, perhaps because they are intangible, are often undervalued. Kim Clark. A school's graduation rate is one of the best measures of how well it's serving students. Money used a recent analysis by the Georgetown Center on Education and Workforce to identify colleges that produce relatively high earners, given the background of their student body. How can I save up enough to buy one? What's the best advice you got after college? Brian Marks, the higher the degree, the better. Gail Murphy, out of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Your cover story did an excellent job describing the steps a budding entrepreneur should take to start his or her own business. The Small Business Administration SCORE program is another good resource. And now for the book, Oklahoma by Guy Baldwin. And so one of the, as you know, I like Brad Pitt, and Brad Pitt is from Shawnee, Oklahoma. So let's spend a little time to know more about Brad Pitt's home state, Oklahoma, by Guy Baldwin. It's the Best Buy test in the Woolly West, and it's where I've got to go. On a map, Oklahoma resembles a jagged butcher's cleaver slicing into Texas. Geologist Charles Gould wrote that the Wichitas are nothing but the tops of buried mountain ranges projecting above and surrounded by a sea of plain. This is an area as complicated as the beat-up surface of an old table. Oklahoma has hundreds of rivers and creeks, but two really stand out: the Red River, which meanders along the southern border, and the Arkansas River in the northeast, which is important for shipping. Where the land is flat, the river often changes course, jumping its bank to follow new channels. In 1999, they finally agreed the boundary should be on the south bank of the river along the vegetation line, where trees and bushes have grown along the river's usual path. Because where's the border? They can bite through the welder's gloves as wildlife expert. When one spies trouble, it spreads the alarm and all duck for cover into their maze of holes and tunnels. Some of the worst tornadoes in memory hit central Oklahoma in the spring of 1999, including one near Mulhall that appeared to be a mile wide. During a series of dry years, much of western Oklahoma's topsoil blew away. Between these extremes are countless stories of ordinary people building lives and communities. About 2,500 years ago, they began settling down and growing crops. Most of Oklahoma's people then were members of the Cattle Confederation and lived in what would become the southeast corner of the state. Osage and Guapa Indians lived farther north, while Apache communities followed the bison herds in the west. Comanches and Kiowas also arrived in the years before the United States took control. I witnessed the execution of the most brutal order in the history of American warfare, he later recalled. The bloody war between the states were also fought in the territories, and for 4 years, Indian Territory was a battle zone. Both the Union and the Confederacy sought the Indian support and coveted their food, their horses, and the lead they mined for bullets. By the end of this second wave of relocations, more than 20 tribes had reservations in Indian Territory. American citizens were still barred from settling in Indian Territory, but their presence grew greater with every passing year. They also sold residency permits to minors so they could live in the territory, but permit sales soon got out of control. Boomers, too, clamored to be allowed to settle in Indian Territory. By the late 1800s, a movement was underway to take Indian Territory away from the Indians. It starts out with the age-old ballad singer's invitation to listen to my tale and proceeds to literally hundreds of two-line verses to tell the tale of every adventure and misadventure that befell cowboys and their cattle as they made their way north on the trail from Texas to Oklahoma on their way to the slaughterhouses and railroad depot in Abilene, Kansas. Winds began to flow. Rain began to fall. It looked by grab like we was gonna lose 'em all. I went to the boss to draw my roll. He had me figured out $9 in the hole. So me and the boss, we had a little chat, and I hit him in the face with my big slouch hat. So the boss said to me, I'm going to fire you, and not only you, but the whole damn crew. The opening of Indian Territory to outside settlement was accomplished as much by the railroads as by homesteaders. Railroads made or broke the futures of the towns in linked or bypassed. In 1887, the grass still grew and the water still flowed, but that year the U.S. government broke the permanent agreements it had made a half century earlier. Guns fired at noon, and 50,000 settlers raced from the border to stake their claims. Some arrived with likely spots to find camps that were obviously more than a few hours old. They'd been beaten by settlers who jumped the gun. By the end of the day, all the land at the center of present-day Oklahoma was snapped up. Kyle Boyd, who had worked in Indian Territory before the land rush, was there. A decade later, a third of the state's farm population had to move from one farm to another in search of work, a far cry from the hopes for a prosperous independent living that brought so many of them to Oklahoma in the first place. By the early 20th century, tenant farming or sharecropping was bigger in Oklahoma than in any other state. By 1906, all the land that had once been held in common by the tribes of Indian Territory had been divided among individuals, tribal members, and non-Indian newcomers. Beneath the newest American state lay fantastic amounts of oil and gas. You can't pipe that gold back east and run the big factories either. Oklahoma City grew around its own oil fields during the boom years. Tulsa grew on the strength of the oil boom. The diversity and promise of urban life, however, also contained the seeds of racial intolerance. The conflict has exploded into a day of brutal violence in which as many as 300 African Americans may have died. Booker, like most other Tulsans, tried hard to forget the terrible event. Like other Americans, they confronted a wrecked economy, but they also endured the Dust Bowl. As suddenly as the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl had knocked Oklahoma to pieces, World War II helped put it back together. Even before the United States entered World War II in 1941, Oklahoma was building Tinker Air Force Base near Oklahoma City. Your division is one of the best, if not the best division in the history of American armies, General George Patton told them. Memories of the Depression, the Dust Bowl, and the wartime sacrifice began to fade in the decades following the war. Agricultural, oil, and the military provided a diversified economy that brought prosperity to most Oklahomans. Just as the term Okies had pinned Dust Bowl desperation to the state, the Broadway play Oklahoma and the movie that followed remade that image in the 1950s. But today, the state has a government that suits the majority's desire for conservatism and low taxes, one that stays out of most aspects of daily life. Some of the biggest decisions affecting Oklahoma are made by the federal government in Washington, D.C., but other important laws affecting everyday life are made, enforced, and interpreted by the state government. These departments and others are designed to carry out laws passed by the legislature, making sure that prison and school cafeterias don't serve spoiled food, for example, and catching drivers who break traffic laws. Judges help decide whether those accused of breaking the law are guilty or innocent. The backbone of Oklahoma's judicial branch is a system of district courts, which hear cases in 26 districts around the state. The court, which has 9 justices appointed by the governor and approved by the legislature, does, however, have some management responsibilities over the Court of Criminal Appeals. The cities and counties of every state have governments too, but nowhere else are there as many tribal governments as in Oklahoma. It wasn't going to bring Julie back. On the day of his sentencing, about 40 members of the victims' families gathered to sign the bombing. Kevin Akers remembers seeing Welch about 5 feet outside of that circle, standing completely alone because they were waiting to cheer the announcement of the decision for death. Cockfighting is really a sickness in our society, claims Gary Moore, a Tulsan involved in the effort to ban it in Oklahoma. To place an initiative on the ballot, a group must collect the signatures of 8% of the state's voters. If the cockfighting question gets on the ballot, people on both sides of the issue will work to sway the voters to their side. Cockfighters are ready for battle. I like these birds because they have the same attitude as me, claims cockfighter Sharon McFarland. I know to the penny what I had to pay for them pigs and horses and chickens, and I know what they're bringing on the market right now because I've had to put out too much hard work not to know. Oklahoma is one of the biggest producers of hard winter wheat, the kind used to make bread. Is Oklahoma becoming the swine state? The biggest impactors are smaller hog farmers such as Mitchell, who is quitting because he can't afford to compete with the factory farms. But by the 1990s, the situation had reversed. Oil prices dropped far below the cost of production for many Oklahoma wells to as little as $6 a barrel, less than the cost of the barrel itself. If they don't, it will be a blow, but it won't be the disaster it once would have been. Most states belong to a single region, but Oklahoma is different. Overlapping these regional identities is the rich variety of cultures that dozens of Indian tribes have brought to the state. Everybody in town baked pies, recounted Melissa Davis, a teenager from Oaks. Marketing Indians is big business. There's a reality underneath the image. You don't have to wait until they're you don't wait until they're 20 or 30 to build an interest in Native culture. I never did learn how to speak Kiowa. My grandfather could only speak a little broken English, recalls lawyer. Perhaps the best example of Indians working together to preserve their heritage is the powwow. His arrow pierced the deer's neck and pinned its quivering body to the trunk of a tree. He was still hungry, but life was going to be good now. From ancient times, the people have sung in times of trouble and danger to cure the sick, to confound the enemies, explains Jimmy Lee Burton of Cherokee. Also, they say every powwow is dancing. I've never been to a bad one, claims Sandy Pantlick of the Oklahoma Department of Tourism. It's incredibly easy to make. You won't even need a recipe after your second or third batch. All you need is to have included is 1 tablespoon of mayonnaise or panhandle coleslaw. This is not a black thing, not a white thing, but something all of Oklahoma City can be proud of, says Jeffrey Carolina, who helps organize the celebration there. 9 o'clock, April 19, 1995, workers arrived at their offices at the Murrah Federal Building in downtown Oklahoma City, leaving their church at the building's daycare center. A bomb had exploded, tearing the building apart. An hour after the bombing, hundreds had already lined up to donate blood. The streets snarled with traffic jams as volunteers arrived to help in any way they could. Across the country, people were amazed by the grace of Oklahoma's response to the tragedy. Today, the bomb site has been transformed into a public memorial for the victims, and a small part of the fence remains intact. The memorial also includes a reflecting pool and a field filled with 168 stone chairs, one for each person killed in the bombing. After the bombing of the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, thousands of Oklahomans placed objects and letters near the fence surrounding it to remember the victims. Proud to be an Okie. They're all proud to be Okies. The whites that were seated at the counter got up, leaving their food unfinished on the table, and emptied their hate tongues into the air. By the time she retired from teaching high school in 1989, her own experiences had become part of her students' history lessons. Will McDaniel's Dust Bowl poem explored the power of words against the backdrop of Oklahoma's harsh landscape and history. Newly moved to Big Muddy, pretty girl, big for 12, and I didn't know that Molly couldn't read the newspapers on our shared front walls until she pointed at Gary Cooper and asked me, what do they say about him? Ain't he good looking? When Schumer resigned in 1985, Mankiller replaced him as a principal chief, becoming the first woman to lead a major Indian tribe. Leading the country's second largest Indian tribe was like being a state governor and a business executive at the same time, and at a troubled time. The tribal budget doubled, which paid for new health centers and children's programs. Women my age, by and large, were not raised to be leaders, she points out. By the late 1920s, millions of Americans read or listened to Rogers every day. But there is something more important for those who will listen. By the time he was a young teenager, Guthrie was more or less on his own. I hate a song that makes you think that you are born to lose, he later said. The British rocker Billy Bragg told an Okemah crowd celebrating Guthrie's 86th birthday that their native son was one of the greatest lyrical poets that your country has produced this century. By the time she was selected for the Murrah mission, she had already flown 4 times. In Oklahoma, they're spread from border to border in little hideaways that few people have heard of. Any single tour of Oklahoma is doomed to be incomplete, but here are some spots to visit for certain. In the 1920s, some Oklahomians thought the building looked old-fashioned and wanted to tear it down. It's also America's third biggest petroleum city. While western Oklahoma suffered during the Dust Bowl years, Tulsa oil millionaires built a forest with downtown buildings in the seductive Art Deco style. Zigzag, streamlined curves, and flamboyant decoration expressed the builders' confidence that oil would make Tulsa a capital of modern elegance. I have seen some of the best, absolutely the best, examples of deco buildings anywhere within a few blocks of downtown Tulsa. Below the foothills in places like Beavers Pond Resort Park, the landscape turns swampy. Some of the bypass towns, such as Clinton, celebrate the old car culture with events such as the Route 66 Festival. Visiting them takes you back to days when cars had fins and white wall tires, radios had to warm up before Elvis Presley or Chuck Berry could croon, and drivers all over the country believed that the place to get their kicks was Route 66. The site, surrounded by the Black Kettle National Grassland, is where American General George Custer and 800 soldiers attacked a village in 1868, killing 50 or 60 Cheyenne Indians. The very first decision about where to build a town could doom everyone involved to failure. Marshall McCulley built the two-room structure in 1894 out of bricks of turf cut from the prairie. Even today, visitors can spot the worn ruts carved by the wheels of passing wagons. Although autograph clips such as this one on the old Santa Fe Trail in Cimarron County were part of graffiti wall and part bulletin board, travelers used them to assure friends and family who followed that they were safe. Fort Nichols completes the picture of a disappearing past, for little remains of it but the foundation. Will Rogers once boasted that Oklahoma is the heart. It's the vital organ of our national existence. Many newcomers are struck by the small-town friendliness of Oklahoma's largest city. It was adopted by the Oklahoma legislature as the official song in 1953. Around the star are air 45 stars representing the states in the Union when Oklahoma became the 46th state. Endangered animals: American burying beetle, black-capped vireo, Eskimo curlew, great bat, Indiana bat, least tern, Wachita rock pocketbook, Ozark big-eared bat, red cockaded woodpecker, and the whooping crane. In 1800, Spain seize Louisiana back to France. Business and trade: banking, insurance, real estate, wholesale, and retail trade. Each spring, hog callers from around the world travel to the small town of Weatherford to show off their best oinks and sueys. At this April festival in Muskogee, visitors can admire 40 acres of brightly blooming azaleas. Outdoor events such as canoe racing and chainsaw carving are the big draws at this June extravaganza in Beavers Bend Resort Park. Besides the powwow, arts and crafts displays and workshops, this September event in Tahlequah includes the State of the Nation speech by the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. He was also a big offensive threat, leading the league in home runs twice and in runs batted in 3 times. Johnny Bench is also from there. In 1992, he became the first Indian to receive the National Medal of the Arts, the nation's highest award for artistic achievement. Allen Hauser. Carl Jansky, who was born in Norman, founded radio astronomy, the study of distant objects by the radio waves they emit. He also helped the Cherokee win back land that had been taken from them by the U.S. government. William Wayne Keeler. This 3-time American League Most Valuable Player had his best year in 1956 when he led the league in home runs, runs batted in, and batting average. Mickey Mantle. N. Scott Momaday, a member of the Kiowa tribe, became the first Native American to win the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction when his book House-Made of Dawn was awarded the honor in 1969. Frank Phillips moved to Bartlesville in 1903 from his home in Iowa to drill for oil. At the 1912 Olympics, he dominated the track and field competition, winning the gold medal in both the pentathlon, and the decathlon. But the following year, he restricted his medals because he had played semi-professional baseball when he was younger. In 1920, he became the president of the American Professional Football Association, which would become the National Football League. Many years after Thorpe's death, the International Olympic Committee gave duplicate gold medals to his children, realizing they should never have been taken away by Jim, and that was Jim Thorpe. In the spring, wildflowers and dogwood blooms color the roadside, while in the fall, the brilliant goats and ruts of the changing leaves take over. Visitors who hike deep into the colorful caverns will see all sorts of crystals and minerals, but the highlight is the beautiful black alabaster, which is found in only 2 other caves in the world. And that is our Oklahoma with Guy Baldwin. And this has been a Late Late Show with BT. Bye.